All right. Welcome to the Stanislaus Council of Governments meeting. It's April 15th, 2026, and I hope you have your taxes done or you have filed for an extension. If you would please start the roll call.
Member Chiesa.
Here.
Member Graywall. Chair Condit.
Here.
Chance Condit. Member Withrow.
Here.
Member Lopez.
Here.
Vice Chair Carr.
Here.
Member Swallen.
Here.
Member Scutia Brayton.
Here.
Member Wright.
Here.
Member Graham. Member Gilbert.
Here.
Member Clausel. Alternate Member Call.
Here.
Member Phillips.
Here.
Member Gokin.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Shannon. Moving on, if you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving on is the public comment section or portion of the agenda. Members of the public may address the policy board on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment? Because I do not have any cards before me. Anything online? Okay. Moving on to presentations. We do have a presentation, but I don't know if we're quite ready for it yet. I think we're working on something, so we might have to reschedule that to another portion on the agenda. So moving to the consent calendar, we do have 4 items on consent. Are there any items on consent that the policy board members would like to pull? Any items on consent that members of the public would like to make a comment on? Anything online? Okay. I'll bring it back to the policy board for a motion.
So move.
I have a first and a second. Did we get who?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Yeah. Presentations here. Okay, we're going to go back to presentation. And if you would, Kate, if you would come up. Oh, please. Mike. So I'd like to take the opportunity in a moment to recognize and extend our sincere appreciation to our interim executive director, Kate Miller. On behalf of the entire policy board, we want to say thank you for your leadership, dedication, and steady guidance during the transitional period. Stepping into an interim role is never easy, yet you ensured continuity of operations, supported staff, and kept our organization moving forward with professionalism and integrity. Your commitment has not gone unnoticed, and we truly are grateful for the time, energy, and expertise you have contributed here to StanCog. Please join me in thanking Kate for her outstanding service to our organization.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you very much.
2 and 3. Thank you. Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Really, it has. Thank you. All right. Guys, you great.
Yes, let us keep that, and we're gonna have
That's very sweet.
we're gonna have some engineers work on this and get it back in.
Here, I'll take this. Nice city guys.
Yes.
My card too, so I'm gonna go run this back.
Okay, the public hearing, the next on the agenda is a public hearing, but that has been rescheduled. So moving on to discussion items. 8A, motion to adopt resolution 25-60, approving the 2026 Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy. Scenario C, mixed use with jobs focus. St. Nick.
Hello, everyone. This is Nick St. Cook,
St.
Associate
Cook,
Planner
I'm sorry.
here at StanCog. I'm going to be handing this over to Michael Schmidt, who is our consultant from Kimley Horn, who helped develop our scenarios and presented this item to the VVS. And I'll hand it over to Michael.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Good evening, Chair and Policy Board. Do I just press it? It's not agreeing, I think. There we go. Great. So these are the topics I'm going to cover in the next 10 minutes or so. I'm just going to briefly cover the scenario development. Then we'll compare each one of the scenarios. I'll move on to what our recommended preferred scenario is, and you already saw it. It's a bit of a mouthful. And there'll be a motion, and then I'm going to talk briefly about the outreach to just give you an update. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So in terms of scenario development, you'll remember, I came back on, I think it was early December, and we talked about some of this in detail. But I think, what the takeaway is, if you'll remember, is the University of Pacific came on board and they helped us forecast out to 2049, which is our planning horizon. And they basically calculated, growth in households, growth in population, growth in employment. And there were meetings with each one of the jurisdictions to help place that growth around the county. I think one of the key takeaways from that is really that the growth continues to get lowered with each successive RTP. And that's not unique to StanCog. That's kind of across the state. Growth projections go down, because if you kind of look at the total growth, it's 11,000 households, 36,000 in population, and 24,000. But that's really only a 6.5% growth in households and about a 9% growth in employment. So employment is outpacing households, which is great news, but the growth continues to slow. Why that matters is because the reality of growth is the hope is that as we place growth in better locations than maybe it was previously, that tends to lower some of our greenhouse gases and some of our emissions. So the idea is, as we get a little denser, that puts people closer to where they work, closer to their homes, closer to shopping, things of that nature kind of thing, which just basically reduces vehicle miles traveled. So the point of this slide is, if you let your eye kind of navigate over to the graph, you'll see the yellow part on top is the new part, and the green is everything that's in the ground. So you can see where the growth isn't a big portion of what's already existing. So it's point being that land use isn't exactly a silver bullet to solve our air quality solutions. So just want to also highlight that there's been a change in process from years in the past. We've introduced a land use model, which is a step up from the process in the past. So we're now using something called urban footprint. And it's a more complex tool that basically, there's kind of three steps that happen. There's this land use model, which informs the travel demand model, which then informs an air quality model. And those three steps are really important. And that air quality model is what lets us know we're meeting the greenhouse gas targets that the state sets and the conformity requirements that the federal government sets. And so we've introduced this land use model. It's more dynamic than the prior one was. So we're hoping that it gives better results. And I think the analysis was improved substantially from that. But it includes all kinds of good stuff about zoning, where opportunities are, and kind of gives us likely locations where stuff may happen. So we had some guiding principles as we worked through these scenarios, I think we've shared before. One thing is to ensure jobs housing balance. So the idea is we're trying to have less folks leaving the county to do their jobs. They tend to focus growth in low VMT areas. That's basically just saying putting you in proximity to your shopping, your home, your school, your job. Increase access to opportunity. That's a little bit of an equity element where we're trying to put folks closer to opportunity. The fourth one is preserve farmland. That's a key metric. It's one of the things we have to report to Carbon. It's obviously an important guiding principle to the community. And then just growth, general and infill developments, which is a little redundant on two, but the same idea of trying to fill in areas that are vacant that exist already. So I'm just going to briefly compare the scenarios, and there's a lot of little tiny, this is a kind of a USA Today infographic, but it's included in your packet so you can kind of dive in a little bit. But on the left, each one of them kind of shows you is what we call business as usual. And business as usual is the prior RTP's approved planned scenario. So that's what we kind of said, okay, this is what we're going to rally around last time. This is what we think are guiding principles for what the next 20 years will have. And with each RTP, we take a look at that and we see if there's a better approach to it. So the first one is matching scenario one, which is our existing scenario that you've previously adopted, to one that's called mixed use with increased transit. And the idea of this one is increasing what we call increasing high quality transit, which we call BRT, bus rapid transit, which is basically a high frequency bus route. And the idea is there'd be 6 of these included in this one, and development would kind of tend to be a little closer to that as we could accomplish that. And the metrics, if they kind of look at them side by side, one of the key things is there's a reduction in the farmland consumed. So we dropped from 1,000 acres to 500. The density goes up in that development. And then we have a shift in multifamily. So in multifamily, when we talk about multifamily, just to be clear, we're not talking about apartments. We're talking about what we call middle housing. So duplexes, triplexes, things that fit in the character of the community. The second one is comparing again business as usual against the second one. This one's called mixed use with job focus. And this one has fewer BRTs, but it's got some more of that high quality transit, only 3 routes this time. And it basically consumes far less farmland than our existing scenario. It's less dense though than the business as usual, which is interesting. It does again increase that reliance on middle housing, and it's focused more. Obviously, there's an 84% up there if you can see the small print. And basically that's just, we're putting a lot more folks close to where they work. And that leads us to D, which is the 4th scenario. And basically this one only has a single BRT route. It relies a little more on local transit. It actually increases the acreage of farmland over the other 3. So I think that's probably moving us in the wrong direction. It's the least dense of all 4. And it kind of has a 50%, a little bit more of an increase in middle housing. So 4 unique scenarios, that generated from the model with, then these were based on the themes we talked about in December. So, and I apologize, like more slides. So here's the scenario comparison. Again, it's probably easiest to see it on your table, but basically just want to highlight a few key things. Is if I look at the acres of farmland, scenario C, which is the preferred one, is the lowest use of acreage. Scenario D uses a lot of farmland acreage. And then the rest of them, if you kind of let your eye go down to the middle housing, which is a focus of our prior RTP, scenario B, scenario C, and scenario D all increase that. So I think, one thing that was not included in this, but is a really important consideration, is that all 3 of these scenarios reduce vehicle miles traveled. And that's important because part of this effort is really to reduce the air quality impacts that we're having. Obviously, those are important considerations. That's a process we're going through right now, is trying to make sure we meet conformity. So lowering the number of miles driven is an important input into that. It's also an important input to greenhouse gas. And all of these scenarios, B, C, and D, reduce it by at least 1%, which may not sound like a lot, but in air quality world, that's a lot. So that kind of brings us to the preferred scenario. And I think as was in the title of this, the recommended preferred scenario is scenario C. This is what the VBS identified as their preferred scenario and forwarded to you for your consideration. It's got 70% of its growth in center and corridor infill areas, has the least farmland consumption. It's kind of a balanced housing, about 60% middle housing, 40% single family. And it focuses again, its development in job-rich areas. And we had heard that some of the general plan, one of the general plan updates that is going on, this is a very good fit for that, the themes of that. And just kind of adding to that, it has 2 more BRT routes than scenario A, but 3 fewer than B. Again, Connext does a good job of connecting. I will say part of the reason we excluded the other ones, D didn't make sense because frankly, the increase in farmland was kind of a non-starter, I think, in our mind. And B, frankly, part of the problem with that one is as Stan RTAs continuing to advance, or Stan RTAs are continuing to advance their plans around what they would like to do, 6 transit routes seems unreasonable kind of thing, given the cost. So I think those 2 kind of are starting to look like they may have a little bit of, I wouldn't call them fatal flaws, but real challenges to their implementation. And that's part of the reason C emerged. So with that, I'll pass it back to Nick for the motion.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions? Go ahead, Vito.
So we didn't answer the question. Are we going to meet the air conformity utilizing this plan? Because I know that we're struggling in the valley as a whole.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so we're very hopeful. I'm going to be careful about what I say because part of the challenge is that the goalpost hasn't been finalized. We're still waiting for several, if you're aware of what's going on, that several of the MPOs there was a change to the way we did the air quality modeling. And also the federal government changed some of the rules around how we're allowed to manage our fleets in California. And that's caused a change by CARB, and CARB has not finalized the number. So it's a little bit, we're kicking at a goalpost that's currently moving kind of thing. But based on the draft budgets, we're okay. But the final budgets won't be determined till May, and there's some indication that that could be a challenge. So we're trying to work through that in the background. Our intent is definitely to deliver a conformity-ready solution, but to be honest, it's like we don't know what the final number is, so we don't know whether we're going to clear it or not. Likewise, the GHG process, just to be clear, the part with CARB where we do the SCS, that happens after the RTP is completed. So that one's a separate process and that begins in September, but we're obviously very focused on that outcome too. So the short answer on conformity is there's still a lot of movement going on. It's unfortunate because we're very late in the process, but it's kind of out of our hands given that we're not driving setting the thresholds.
Are you meeting with the other 7 cogs? Are you on a call with them starting?
I'm connected with Alex Mercucci, Alex Mercucci is the one who represents all 8 the MPOs to talk about this issue. So there's one air quality person who kind of manages the process and is the connection to CARB and to the federal government. So she's kind of managing this process, and it's a bit of a juggling act because there's also conversations around, are we going to coalesce around a single budget? Are we going to have individual sub-area budgets? So there's, to be honest, there's a fair number of moving parts right now, which is kind of stressful for everyone because we're late in the game. So I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer than that, but I think everyone's doing the best they can with what we know.
Go ahead, Rose.
Thank you for that presentation, Michael. So you presented to all the regions, to the council?
Yes.
And how many?
9.
Nine. What was the feedback, for good or for bad questions? What did you hear?
Generally, we didn't get a lot of questions, to be honest, kind of thing. It was presented in an informational vein and also in an effort to continue to drive participation in the outreach. We've got a website where we've been trying to coalesce folks around. During those same events, we also had folks canvassing nearby, going to churches or community centers nearby or some things like that to try to do some direct outreach. So we didn't get a lot of direct feedback, but I would characterize it more as an intent to try to draw in more public feedback and draw it through the website into the events that we have ongoing.
Were you successful in drawing in feedback to the website?
I think so comparatively. I mean, driving a lot of excitement about something that's 20 years out is always kind of a challenge on the face of it. So I think we've definitely gotten more feedback and more contacts than we did in the prior one, and there's been a lot of effort put into that. But this is always a challenging topic because it's not immediate. We're not talking about a specific project that necessarily folks can point their finger at and be like, that's right in my backyard and I have an opinion about it. We're talking about kind of more general stuff, but I think the involvement is gone up, and still have events ongoing for another month or so. So thank you for the question.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mayor.
So we have this flyer about these community open houses, and that is connected to.
Correct.
Okay, so just help me understand. We're voting on the scenario tonight, but then these.
Yeah, so we're
for community input. So I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, so tonight is just to confirm the scenario, but we're still collecting input on individual. There's still, between now and the end of the process, that'll still be draft essentially. We're in June. The intent, I think June 8th, we're hoping to release the RTP, and so that'll be a draft, and we'll continue to take public comment. So this is continuing an effort to bring. To get input, and until it's done, it's not done, kind of thing. I guess I'd characterize.
So I saw these on social media, and I was curious about that.
Yeah.
So will it be presented as scenario C to the public?
Right.
And then they'll give input on scenarios.
And I think we're also at the time, we're also asking them we're updating the non-motorized plan. So the bicycle plan is being updated at the same time. And so we're kind of, it's an opportunity to speak on a lot of different issues, not just scenario C. We're trying to just get general input, I think, to if there's opportunities for us to better reflect desires around transportation improvements, there's still time. So I think it's of that
The
nature.
bicycle pass, I was at an event recently and a gentleman couldn't get to me fast enough to just gush about how in Stanislaus County, we have, or in Modesto in particular, bike paths that are like one of the few places in the state of California that allows for the 3 feet safety factor that's required by law. He was just gushing about our area and how we do that. So that's a positive thing that, you know, when I hear you talk about that, will that all be?
Yeah.
As part of this, that's a plus?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think but there are also some gaps we've recognized because we've gone through this. We've been meeting with the Bicycle Advisory Committee with StanCog. We've had 3 different meetings with them and really dive deep into exactly where the connections are, where the missing connections are, where do we need to do improvements. So there's out of that is to be a prioritized list of improvements that we can continue to build on, you know, what folks really like and what they still want kind of thing.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So has anybody reached out to like the building industry or any of the housing builders and see like what kind of houses they want to build instead of like us telling them they have to build multifamily versus single family? Has there been any interaction with them?
So I will say that the CEZ plan, the Community Enhancement Zone plan, which is a focused part of this project, is really kind of focused on that. So it's really kind of developing a toolkit to kind of focus on the middle housing. It's also there's a pilot that's ongoing kind of thing in the city of Modesto where we're looking at 2 corridors, and there's been some outreach directly to the building community and to developers along those corridors to talk about some of the exact issues. The team also includes an economist, which is really looking into the exact question you're talking about, developing performas to see how reasonable it is to construct this type of product.
Any other questions from the board? All right, I'd like to open up to public comment. Any public comment on this agenda item? Anything online? Okay, bring it back to the policy board for a motion.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving on to 8B, motion to adopt resolution 25-61, approving the final draft of the 2027 Regional Active Transportation Program, the ATP guidelines. Jose.
Thank you.
Slide, skip past it.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Jose Luis Cáceres. I'm your Director of Programming and Program Delivery. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the first of 2 funding items coming before the board. This is the final draft, meaning there was an original draft that has since changed into a final draft of the Regional Active Transportation Program guidelines. Now, just a quick overview. In your staff report, we talk about 3 parts of the active transportation program. In our region, really only 2 apply. There's a statewide program, a pot of over $300 million. And then there's our regional pot of just a little less than 4 million, 3.8. Now, I'm just going to speak about this briefly. The statewide pot, even though there's a lot of money there, it is super competitive. Last cycle, there were $2 billion worth of projects chasing that 300 million. And in the regional pot, it's just the projects from our region chasing these. And our local agencies tend to come in with smaller projects since we have a smaller pot. Now, we have changed how we've done these guidelines and our call for projects. I've been here, this is my 2nd cycle of active transportation program. I want to talk a little bit about the prior cycle. So if this is cycle 8, the last one cycle 7, then cycle 6 or 3 cycles ago, StanCog didn't select its own projects for the regional program. Instead, we asked our local agencies to submit their applications to the state. and the state would score projects, and it would pick the projects that would get funded out of the state pot. And then it would also, if there were still projects left from the region that hadn't been funded, it would score those regional projects for funding. Now, in that cycle, something strange happened that I wasn't here for, but there weren't actually enough projects at the region for the regional funds. So our region had to scramble, come up with some guidelines, select some projects, and submit them. So that when I came around, there was a question of, well, how should we do this? My own prior background favors not letting the CTC score our projects, but to score our projects ourselves. That is to have our own scoring committee, our own guidelines, and to rank our own projects. And I want to talk a little bit just pros and cons, because I shared this with the committees as well. Well, I guess I'll start with the cons. The cons of scoring your own projects is it's your own local agency staff that scores these projects, plus StanCog staff. And it takes a little while to read applications from other agencies and to dutifully go about the scoring process. But our local agencies are familiar with Public Works, with bike ped projects, and we know this region. When we ship it off to the CTC, by definition, by rule, they're not allowed to have someone from the region score our projects. They have to be from another part of California. And their qualifications can vary. The CTC doesn't like to talk about the varying qualifications of the scorers, but it's not necessarily the Public Works Director of the City of Ceres scoring a project. But my number one reason why we would score our projects ourselves is the variation in scoring. If you've ever been part of a selection process for hiring a candidate or hiring a consultant, and you've used a scoring criteria or a set of scoring criteria, you may know that some of your partners didn't agree on the scores of projects. There was some variation. The CTC doesn't like to admit that there's variation in scores. The way you deal with variation is by increasing your sample size. You have more scores, more reviewers, and so then that average is something you can kind of hang your hat on. Yeah, okay, we know which is the top and the second and third project. The CTC has a sample size of 2. Just 2 scorers picked at random who cannot be from our region score our projects. They're probably going to pick the best project, but they're not necessarily going to pick the number 2 and number 3 project as, I would say, as accurately as our own agencies could. So there was some discussion at committee of whether we should do it our way or the other way. And generally, the recommending committees recommended that we score our own projects. So that's what the proposal is for this cycle: a scoring committee of 7 to 8 members. 8 if we can get 2 members of StanCog, but we're a little thin on staff this year. So at least 7. Sometimes the local agencies, it's hard to get them, but we're aiming for 7 to 8. Regional applicants will first apply to the state, and the state call for projects is already live right now. If they get funded at the state level, then they won't come applying for us because they'll have already got money. And I like to call it the varsity round, because only the best projects really get selected at the state level. Then those that did not make it in the varsity, they'll come apply for regional funds, but they have to first apply to the state. We are not actually allowed to use the exact same scoring criteria as the state. I like their scoring criteria, so the proposal is to use the same as the state, but we have to change it a little bit. We add 5 points for inclusion of the RT, a project being included and consistent with the regional transportation plan. I would point out there's only 75,000 possible that can be spent or programmed to an active transportation plan, which an active transportation plan can go for, gosh, 300, 400,000. This is not really a good place to go shopping for funding a bicycle pedestrian plan. It's eligible, but that is the most that we could give. I'll say this, it costs $20,000, $30,000 just to submit an active transportation program from our local agencies. It's just not a very cost-effective use of local agency funds to apply for planning. So we took this through committees, and this is our advisory committee summary. At the executive committee, it was amended request, and that would be that 100%, if 100% of a project is funded by the state ATP, they can't come back for a second bite of the apple by coming for regional ATP. And that would mean like trying to get their local agency match covered by the regional ATP. Without that rule, someone could have done that. The second corollary to that is if they're not 100% funded in the state ATP, yeah, we could fund them through the regional ATP. I'll tell you, that's not your director of programming's preference. If they're not 100% funded through the CTC, I'm going to try to see if we can get more money from the CTC. That's how we did Church Street. I took feedback. We put the membership of the scoring committee into a table format for easier reading. And the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee wanted a section on the benefits of active transportation program. And so we added that as well. So I'm not going to hit every one of these dates, but this is the schedule of where we are. We're here at the policy board here in April. I have to submit these guidelines to the CTC by May 8th. And then in June, that's when the state will have its deadline for state active transportation project applications. We will, then the CTC will consider our guidelines. You know, I'm reading all these anyways. I guess the thing to know is our own deadline would be in October 1st. So it's staggered dates. They first apply to the state, then they'll come apply to the region. And by that time, we will know how they've turned out the state. At the end, this whole thing ends in June 2027 when the CTC finally approves everything for funding. And with that, I'll take any questions.
All right, any questions from the policy board? Seeing none, go ahead.
I know at exec, we had asked about if you got preference at the state, if you had a local match. Did you ever figure out?
Yes, so there's 3 tiers. If you're a large project, yes, there are points for coming in with local match. We copy that same criteria, but there's no way we could fund a large project. I think a large project is over 10 million request. Then there's medium and small. Medium also you get points for having a match. It's not required, but you get points. And really, if you want to compete at the state level, you have to get every possible point. And then small projects, which is probably all we can fund here at the regional level, do not require a match in our funding criteria. They don't require a match of the state criteria, and there's no points that are generated by providing a match for a small request project. I know it's a little complicated, but if someone's asking for 2 million for a project, we're just fine funding it at 2 million if that's the request. At least that's what the guidelines say.
So at exec, just so everyone knows that this was something I felt strongly about, but I thought that we got preferential treatment for having a local match. I didn't want someone putting in at the state underbidding to improve their position and then coming back and asking for this money. But I didn't realize the small one because it was unclear. Only the large and the medium projects.
Yes.
You say match gives you points, upscaling. That may change my outlook. But I'd like to hear from the rest of the board because you got to think about this.
We'll try to stall a little bit.
Maybe this one practical thing, the total amount of money we have that's less than 4 million, that can pay for maybe a couple of class 2 bike projects, a couple of sidewalk projects, maybe one expensive sidewalk project. It's not very much.
Go ahead, Mayor.
So when Supervisor Caves says underbidding, isn't there like rules or guidelines that you have to like be an honest engine with this and be
when I heard underbidding,
bidding process that it's a standard and oranges and
Member Kissa, would you like to respond to your comment or question?
You mentioned underbidding.
They don't ask for as much money as the project costs. And then you come and get your local match from the local ATP. That's my concern. Not because you have to apply, in my thought process, you have to apply for a fully funded project. So if you have $1 million local match, and it's a $10 million project, you're asking for the full 9 million. If the state doesn't give you the full 9 million, then I think you should be able to come and ask for money. They give you your full ask. When I say underbid is that you don't have the $1 million match and you think you're going to come back here.
That's what I'm saying. Aren't there requirements that you would have to have that?
If you recall, this is actually a valid, effective strategy for pursuing funds. And we're doing this for State Route 132. You show up with a match, you get your funding, but you don't stop asking for money. So someone who gets, for instance, someone who gets $9 million of funding of ATP from the state could turn around and apply for a carbon reduction program, a CMAQ funding program from us. They could apply for other federal discretionary sources. And in doing so, they could replace their local match with a federal or state source. And this is a standard practice unless there's a rule or law preempting that. And so the amended version of the request before this policy board says that if they get their full request from the state, which might not be every dime they need to do the project, they are not to come back to the regional program to request any more ATP funding for the project.
Any other questions from the board? All right, seeing none, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, I'm going to ask it, anything online? Bring it back to the board for either some more comments or motion.
I think I'm going to stick with the motion as stated.
I'll second. Okay, I got a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to the next agenda item 8C, motion to adopt resolution 25-62 approving the final draft, the 2026 Measure L Rail Services Funding Guidelines. Jose Luis, you're back up.
Still here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is this is actually an exactly $4 million funding program. This is for projects done by transit operators that connect people to passenger rail. And I'll jump into it. It's our draft 2026 Measure L Rail Services, and these are the funding guidelines. So straight out of the ordinance, I copied and pasted it into the staff report. The ordinance not only has money for road rehabilitation and maintenance that goes to local agencies, and it doesn't just have money for our regional projects. There's a section in the ordinance for transit. And within that section, there are several bulleted pots of money that are at the discretion of StanCog. Actually, I think 2 at the discretion of StanCog. This is one of them. It's called Rail Services. And bulleted summary is that it's for operations, maintenance, and infrastructure improvements for public transit connections to existing rail services, passenger rail services. It says in the ordinance, it's okay to supplement funds for the cost of public transit connections to rail services, meaning, let's say a project already has some money, this can be more money. It's to provide connections to services such as ACE, BART, Amtrak. It also covers marketing for those services. It may be used to increase ridership. There's this one section here that doesn't seem to match the rest. It says, and fund new Amtrak service. This funding program doesn't seem to score it doesn't fund, their funding program, the way it's designed is not to provide new Amtrak service. But it also increases bus van connections to existing ACE services in the Bay Area. And it says in the ordinance, no funds may be used for high-speed rail. People were adamant about that. The last time we did this funding program, we funded Turlock Transit. They have a shuttle service that's Dial-A-Ride, connects folks to the Denair Turlock station. And actually, the reason we brought this is the city of Turlock, the transit agency, said, hey, we've been operating this service since 2002. We thought it was only going to be a 2-year program. Can we do this funding round again? And the answer is yes. So since 2002, we've collected money. We have $4 million. We actually have more than 4 million, but we're just doing a call for around 4 million. And then the plan is to come back in 2028, do this again. In 2028, we won't have 4 million. We'll have something closer to 2 million. Some changes in the guidelines are I made changes to the project schedule requirements to kind of make them make more sense. Also, if an agency doesn't actually do a project consistent with the ordinance, if they return the funds to us, they need to return it back with the interest that it earned. We clarified what the makeup of the 3-member scoring committee is, and then we added some language that applicants provide information on how they plan to sustain the proposed services without Measure L support. Now, we took this through committee. It went to the TAC, that's the Technical Advisory Committee, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the STAC, and the Executive Committee. When we met with StanRT, and then what we were directed to do by the STAC was to go meet with StanRT and Turlock Transit to edit the selection criteria. There's 20 points for safety. And the question was, why are we scoring on safety? Is there an unsafe way of getting to passenger rail? Is this a problem? It's not really written in the ordinance. And there were other questions. So met with the transit operators and we made changes between the draft to the final draft you have today. And also the STAC said to remove the explanation of sustained service without Measure L. Measure L is not going away. At least there's no plan for it to go away. Why are we scoring projects based on that criteria? So the final draft reflects those changes. And What we would do is if the board approves, we could have a call for projects in May. We think we could do a quick turnaround with a submittal deadline of June 30th, have these scored and ready for board approval at the August meeting. And then there's agreements that have to be done. So these projects could be ready to go October 2026. With that, I'll take any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jose. Any questions for Jose? And none, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Any public comment on this agenda item? Anything online? All right, bring it back to the policy board for a motion. Second. I have a first and a second. Shannon, did you get it?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to 8D, motion to adopt resolution 25-63, approving the fiscal year 2025-26 overall work program amendment 2. Jean Flett.
Yes, thank you so much. So the OWP, or Overall Work Program, is a required document that we must submit each year and is approved by our funding partners, which include FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, FTA, and Caltrans. This is a management tool which identifies tasks and products that StanCog will undertake each fiscal year. Amendments are typically done throughout the year, and year-end amendments are always necessary. Amendment number 2, the one before you this evening, is necessary to include Caltrans carryover and a reconciliation figures for FY 24-25. So Schedule 1 is our operating and project revenue. The program carryovers from FY 23-24 to 24-25 are critical to move forward through the StanCog process, as funds must be programmed by May 8th, or we're in jeopardy of losing a total of over $1 million. I do want to point out that we are taking out the Measure L public outreach of the 1% that was in question for a while there. That is not being put in this budget at all. Schedule 2, the operating and expenditure budget. Contract costs increased, and they're labeled there during the year, primarily to loss of staff. We needed to get augmented staff to come in and help us for the loss of staff. Like we've had temps come in, we've had a person that is actually a CPA help us in the finance department, and others that have helped us throughout the year, primarily in finance. And then there was also follow-up from the grand jury that we dictated that we needed to go ahead and do. This decrease in salaries that you'll see at the top of the page was adjusted for all vacant positions, and you can see that that brought down the total there by a little over $1.4 million. Schedule 3, oops. Sorry, this is a new clicker, so there we go. Project expenditure budget. This is the contract cost, our remaining pretty flat. We're almost towards the end of the RTP, which is a big ticket item for us, and it is every time we use it. The area ride share. And then at the bottom of the sheet, you can see that we do have a balanced budget. So Schedule 4, we've removed from the line item budget. This will be brought back with the FY 2026-27 budget to coordinate current funding. Current staff time and consultant time for the Highway 132 West has been included in the project expenditures on Schedule 3. So we have accounted for those funds. So this item was brought to the April 1st Management and Finance Committee meeting and then the April 6th Executive Committee meeting for review and recommendations. Caltrans, and we had Caltrans comments and written public comments that was received right before the Management and Finance Committee that we needed to address, which we have. The public's comments were consistent with what the comments were we got from Caltrans, but between the two, they were substantial. There were substantial comments. That's why this item is late. Committees acknowledged that the OWP needed to be approved by the April Policy Board meeting to meet the deadline for the reimbursement. And then the recommendation to approve the item, or the Management and Finance Committee recommended to approve the item on the condition that the public comments were addressed prior to the Policy Board, which they have been. We have addressed all the comments. Staff has been working diligently over the last week, making sure that we got everything addressed. Revisions have been made and the budget and narrative are now ready for submission to Caltrans. This is our last chance to do any of the amendments this year. So we hope that we can get this passed this evening. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jean. Any questions from the policy board? Seeing none, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Any public comment on this agenda item? Anything online? Okay, I'll bring it back to the policy board for either comments or motion. Casey moved to approve.
Second.
George, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, unanimous. Thank you. All right, moving on to 8E, motion to adopt resolution 25-64, approving an amendment to the Employee Policies and Procedures Handbook. Monica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the Policy Board. Monica Streeter, General Counsel for StanCog, and I'll be presenting this item. The item before you is an amendment to the Employee Policies and Procedures Handbook. This item was presented to the Management and Finance and Executive Committees in March. It was also presented again to the Executive Committee in April. At the March Executive Committee, one of the proposed amendments was flagged for further analysis and review, and that was the proposed amendment regarding the provision of retiree health care benefits. That proposed revision is no longer being recommended. And a summary of the provisions is follows. If I could have the next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is a summary of the proposed changes regarding reductions in force. The determination as to whether a reduction in force is necessary and the manner in which it is implemented will be within the discretion of the executive director, but prior to implementation, the executive director will notify and consult with the policy board. Management employee vacation accrual, the cap is now being reduced from 800 to 500 hours. At the executive committee meeting, we were asked to provide information regarding some of our member agencies as to what their caps are. So for reference, we looked up at what other management employee caps are. For the county of Stanislaus, it's 800 hours plus 1 year of accruals. In the city of Modesto, unrepresented management, executive and confidential management employees, it's up to 2 times their annual vacation accrual rate. So for 5 years of service, that would be 224 hours, and that's just for reference purposes. The revision regarding cash conversion for vacation is now limited to a maximum of 120 hours for management employees. It can only be done once per fiscal year. I'm sorry, that's for all employees. 1 time per fiscal year, and you have to maintain a minimum balance of 80 hours in your vacation bank. Non-management employees must have taken at least 1 week of vacation to be eligible for any cash conversion, and supervisory and management employees must have used all of their management leave hours. Any cash conversions are also subject to executive director approval and budget availability. For performance evaluations, we made a clarification. We used to conduct performance evaluations on an annual basis, and every employee's evaluation was conducted at the same time. Now performance evaluations will be conducted every 12 months, but it will coincide with the anniversary of that particular employee's hire date. The supervisor will also provide or outline objective and goals for the employee for the upcoming year. For salary increases, those are based on merit. Special merit increases cannot exceed 5% and will not be provided more than one time per year, and require written justification for any special merit increases. And
The written justification goes to who?
the written justification is part of the file, part of the employee file, and is approved by the executive director for the special merit increases, the way it's drafted now.
I would think the chairman always has to see, whoever the chairman is, should see those. It maybe doesn't have to come to the board, I don't know. Again, it's part of what got us into this. I think there needs to be a set of eyes on there.
So we have capped it. We have identified it can't be more than one time per year. It has to have written justification. And it doesn't apply to any employee that's already at the top of their salary range. I think I might have just failed to mention that, but it doesn't apply to anybody at the top of their salary range. They cannot exceed their existing salary. Okay. So should I keep going or should we pause here? There's one more provision.
I'm just thinking, what's the harm in that? In having it come over here? It's not.
The justification, so someone, there's a backup.
So just notify the chair.
I think what the justification.
Okay.
An initial or signature, like that would probably be good.
Okay. Thank you for that. Next slide, please. So the last provision is regarding retiree health care benefits, and this is the item that was flagged. The way the employee handbook is currently written, this is what it provides, is that retiree health benefits are provided to certain employees. And it provides 100% premium coverage of health, dental, and vision benefits if the employee has met certain criteria. And those criteria are the employee has a minimum of 10 years of continuous StanCog employment, is at least 60 years of age, is employed at StanCog at the time of retirement, and was employed by StanCog on or before November 17th, 2021. The November 17th, 2021 date was chosen because that was the date that that provision version of the employee handbook was presented to and adopted by the policy board. And this provision is currently written, applies to a very small number of our employees. What was presented in March, if I can have the next slide, please, included a proposed addition, and the proposed addition is there at the bottom of the slide in bold, that would have expanded retiree healthcare coverage to all employees until the age of 65. And this provision has now been deleted from the proposed employee handbook. If I could have the next slide, please. And so the version before you tonight for consideration has that proposed language stricken. So we were not considering that. The other revisions to the handbook are more administrative in nature. They don't alter the substance of the provision. For example, the section on use of sick leave was revised for clarity, and the section on leave for victims of violence has been updated to conform with statutory provisions. The proposed amendments were prepared by outside counsel and reviewed by StanCog staff. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Monica. Questions for Monica? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a couple. I know that when we don't normally get to, say, negotiate and do a contract per se, like counties and cities do with our bargaining units and things like that. So, I mean, some of these I would bring up in that context, but since we don't normally do that, one of them is Article 3, the holidays. So looking at the amount of holidays given to StanCog staff comes out to 15. And I know that most cities in the county are either 12 or 13. So, I mean, looking at some of those that are in there, I mean, I don't even know if some of them are considered holidays anymore, but I'd kind of like to see maybe you or the executive director go back and maybe talk to staff and see about reducing that number and seeing if they want to put in a floater per se, or, you know, deleting some of the ones and getting it down from 15 to 12 or 13. And then whenever you're ready for the next thing.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Charlie.
All right, and then also, the sick leave in section 3. So sick leave normally is in case an employee is sick, then, you know, they can take time and recuperate, get well, things like that. So one of the things I have, questions about is, say somebody voluntarily leaves and then we're going to pay them out for part of their sick leave. I don't think we should do that. And then also, if somebody passes away but hasn't retired, then we're going to pay 75% of their sick leave to their estate. I mean, sick leave is for the employee. It's a benefit to be used, you know, obviously to recover and because, you know, people get sick and that's just the way it is. I don't think we should be paying out to either an estate or paying people who decide to go to maybe what they consider greener pastures to get another job, paying out their sick leave. So I'd like to see those addressed also.
Is that a right? Or the sick leave?
The sick leave, if certain provisions are met, there is an opportunity to pay that out. I think if, it provides that if you separate from the agency, and it's not for cause, that you can be paid up to 25% of your sick hours, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, but there's no legal requirement to, which I believe was his question.
State law.
There's no legal requirement to do that.
No, there's no legal requirement to do that. So Member Gokin, are you asking for these amendments to come back at a future date and to be negotiated with staff? Or are you looking for these amendments to be effective with tonight's action?
Well, I don't know the rest of the policy boards on board with that. I'd like to have the staff have some input and I'd like you and the executive director maybe to go back and talk to them and bring it back in front of us.
We can do that. We've noted those two items and we'll bring that for a future amendment.
Any other questions? Monica. All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment. Public comment. Carolyn?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Newman. Just a couple things. I'm not sure if it still says it in there, but I know I've seen so many versions of this thing. At one point, it said that you could cash out executive or management leave, the 80 or 90 hours that are listed in there. I'm wondering if that has been addressed. Also, I don't see, you have yearly performance reviews, but you don't have anything for like a 30, 60, 90 day for like a new employee to just kind of touch base with them and let them know how they're doing to like correct course on their new endeavor with the organization. So those are the two things I think I would like to see. Thanks.
Thank you, Carolyn. Any other public comment on this agenda item? Anything online? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for more comments or a motion or an amendment. You're reaching. Mayor, go ahead.
I would suggest that the two items that were just suggested by in public comment be added to the list for staff to look at
And be brought
discuss.
back.
Because my experience is that when a new employee is hired, there's a 30, 60, 90 day or whatever, you know, for the city. I know it's, yeah, there's 30, 60. I'm not sure about 90, but that would be seems standard in most places that I've been. And that's a real opportunity. It's not, I'm not thinking of punitively, but I feel like that's a really valuable time. Plus, then it should be some sort of criteria that if a person maybe is not meeting the standard, oh yes, there is a 90 day for the city of Modesto also, then they can have that discussion at that time if it's just not working.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
So I would agree, incorporate and send it back to staff and let them noodle through. I think we have 13 days of vacation and I think we're one up on most people. I don't know if anyone else is at 13. So I was looking to see what the other two dates were that weren't included. But the one thing I want to say is to the employees, this seems like a shock. And it is in no way a reflection on the employees of this organization that we're doing this. We have to write something that we've allowed as board members mission creep throughout the years. And it seems like it's a shock because we're doing this all in a matter of a few months. But again, I got the utmost respect for all of you who are working day in and day out, short-staffed. And so, again, don't think of, I know it's easy to say because pay has a lot to do with morale, but know the board, at least myself, I guess I should speak on behalf of myself. You have my complete and utter support. This is a pretty unique position that has been allowed over quite some time. And we're just trying to get it back to what is normal, what normal standard operating procedure.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, George.
Question back for one of the items brought up was the number of holidays. Is there any suggestion at which holidays would suggest to be removed or?
That's why I'd like to see the executive director and or Monica have that discussion with staff. I mean, as long as the number is 12 or 13, whichever holidays they feel are most beneficial, doesn't matter to me. I mean, that's why I think they should have some input on that. I mean, obviously I could pick the two, but I'm not the one taking the holidays.
Then the other part of my question would be is if if they come back with some eliminated holidays, some of these, could they be considered like a floating holiday where an employee can use it anytime throughout the year, but they only get like one or two? That's been a practice I've seen in the employee sector or the private sector that has worked really well.
Monica, did you want to?
We'll take the board's direction. We can do that.
That'd be something that I would agree to see, that if we eliminate or reduce the number of actually dated holidays, then allow an employee to have one or two what we call floaters. They can use any time of the year. Something pops up, they need to take a day off. They have that ability. But that way, all staff or the organization isn't all closing down on the same days every day throughout the year. I mean, there may be employees who really don't want to do anything on Columbus Day. They'd rather come to work, but if we can give them the opportunity to take a day in February in place of that, that would benefit them.
We'll take that direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what if we do this? What if we, with the items that have been discussed to be brought back, can we vote on the policy book on everything else that has not been brought back?
Please speak closer to the mic.
Sorry. So if we could do a motion to ID the items that have been discussed and vote on the rest of the policy books that we got.
We can surely do that as long as someone has it written down what is going to come back. So we can smooth that.
I can summarize that
Okay.
for the board. We've been asked to go back and meet with the staff regarding holidays and regroup and revise that down to 12 holidays per year. If we eliminate a holiday, have one or two floating holidays as an option. Sick leave, eliminating the ability to cash out or pay that sick leave out upon retirement, separation, death, etc. And then the public comments were executive leave cash outs, whether those allowed or not allowed, and come back with that, and probationary employee reviews at 30, 60, or 90 days as appropriate.
Motion to approve.
This is wordsmithing, but I thought I heard you say, and I don't think that was the intent. If we eliminate one holiday, I thought you said 2 or 3 floating holidays. And it was 1 for 1.
1 to 2 floating days, depending on how many holidays we remove, because we're currently at 15 according
Right,
to
but we
member Gogan's.
remove 1, we replace it with a floater.
Yeah.
Okay. Not remove 1, replace it with 2 floaters.
No, no.
Okay.
no.
Okay. 'Cause That's what I heard.
It was never remove one and replace it with a floater because that's still 15, no matter what you call them.
Well, that's
You
the
want to remove
board.
4 and
Well,
put in one floater, that
Yeah.
it was never remove one to give up one floater because you're not removing any.
You and Jory are saying two different things. And-
Okay, and I'll clarify mine. If we take the current list of 15 and reduce it down to 12, but we can still add 2 floating holidays to the employee's vacation list that they can use anytime throughout the year. We're still at what, 14 or whatever, but the main point is there's not going to be 15 consecutive day or 15 holidays where this organization completely shuts down all at the same time.
So my concern wasn't the fact that everybody's going to be off on the same day. My concern is the lost productivity. And whether it's a floater or whether it's the same day, it's still 14 or 15. So I mean, I would not support eliminating 2 holidays and adding 2 floaters because we're still at 15. You're just calling them something different.
Bring us options. How's that?
Yeah,
Staff?
exactly.
Bring us options.
Most corporations, most things, I'm sure there's an average out there that usually around 12 or 13. 2 that I see on here that are pretty out of the normal for, especially for a government agency, would be Good Friday, and then Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples' Day is kind of just, those are the 2 that I see on here. The others all seem pretty standard, so I'm sure there's things we can compare them up to.
So minimize it to 12 or 13, of which the 12 or 13, 2 of them could be floater holidays.
Got that.
That's the motion.
So the motion then would be to approve the employee policies and procedures handbook as presented with direction to staff to come back with a future amendment for those 4 items. The holidays, the sick leave payout, and the executive leave cash outs and probationary employee reviews.
Correct. Who was my first? You, Vito was the first. Who was the second?
Sorry, B.
Rosa was the second.
Rosa?
Okay. You got picked. All right, I got a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving on to 8F, motion to adopt resolution 2565, approving the professional service agreement with Karen Dunger Consultancy. Amber.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll take this item. I provided in the staff report an update on the recruitment for our finance director. That's currently being advertised, and we have a first round of reviews set for April 4th with first round of interviews anticipated for May and June. So CPS HR, Stan Cog contracted with them to run this recruitment process for us. So they've provided also an update on the efforts that they've made to get the flyer out and the advertisement out. So I provided that summary as well in the staff report, which is quite vast. And I got an update from them last week that we've received over a dozen applications. So we're receiving some qualified applications, so I'm hopeful we'll have something. However, we won't have something until probably end of June, if all goes well. So in the interim, I'm recommending a contract with Karen Dunger, who I believe many of you know. She was the finance director here at Stan Cog and has 9 years of experience here doing financial management. She understands Caltrans processes, overall work program, our budgeting process. So she's well versed in all of our requirements and can help us coordinate with Caltrans on getting our OWP amendment in, as well as our fiscal year 26-27 overall work program, which is due here. A draft is due actually final in May. And so we're, as we're closing out this year, just in need of kind of this urgent stopgap measure for staff augmentation. And really the idea is she would provide staff support and training and direct staff as opposed to taking on the work herself unless we need, that additional support in workload fluctuations. So it's not anticipated that she'll be working more than 10 hours a week. At the beginning, maybe more, but then it'll hopefully taper off. So we're recommending a not to exceed amount of 50,000. She'll bill at a rate of $250 an hour. And again, this is really anticipated just until we get a full-time finance director. Happy to answer a question.
Questions for Amber? All right, seeing none, I'll open it up to public comment. Any public comment on this agenda item? Nothing online? Okay, I'll bring it back for motion.
So.
Okay, David Wright first, Terry second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, unanimous. Okay, next on the agenda are the informational items. Hopefully everybody's got a chance to take a look at those. Caltrans report. Grace and Caleb, thank you guys for being here.
Thank you, Chair. And I said earlier, you get a double dose of Caltrans tonight. So, and the general feedback I've been getting is Caleb has been doing a great job. So I told him, you get to keep the job of reporting this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to Caleb for some good news.
All right. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Grace. I've got 4 announcements and a few funding opportunities. So first, last month, the California Transportation Commission allocated funding for projects. We had 3 projects within the district that received funding support. One is for the San Joaquin Cogs Phase 1B of State Route 99-120 connector project. The second one was San Joaquin County State Route 88 pavement anchor project near the community of Lockford. And the third is Merced County State Route 140-165 mobility improvement project south of Hillmar. Next item is the Caltrans Division of Local Assistance, Office of Environmental Compliance and Outreach, ECO, is pleased to reintroduce the monthly virtual ECO office hours to help local agencies with NEPA compliance for their local assistance projects. That's going to be the first Wednesday of the month from 10 to 11 a.m. Please contact our district local assistance representative, Parminder Singh, for more information on that. Next is the Caltrans Workers Memorial. So each April, Caltrans honors its fallen employees at the statewide Workers Memorial. Family members, coworkers, friends, and the public are invited to attend the memorial, which will take place on April 23rd at the River Walk Park in West Sacramento from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can also watch the event and past Workers Memorial events on the Caltrans website. And then the fourth item is our May is Bike Month event. So this year, the event will be held on Wednesday, May 27th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on the Virginia Corridor Trail, VCT, next to O'Brien's Market in Roseburg Square in the city of Modesto. It's a similar event to last year. There'll be tabling and information sharing in the plaza from 10 to 11. We'll have a few remarks by the organizers at 11. And then at 11:15, the group bike ride will begin on the VCT and will cover the paved portion of the VCT from Campus Way to Woodrow Avenue. So agency partners and advocates and the public are welcome to join us at that event.
What day was that?
That is May 27th at 10 a.m. And then there's 3 funding opportunities, and which Shannon printed and put it in front of you. I won't go into great detail on those. One is for the CalSTA TIRSIP, Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. As Jose Luis talked about, the ATP Cycle 8. And although Caltrans can't give letters of support for those 2 funding opportunities because they're state, we're happy to help any of the local agencies with applications and any support you need prior to submitting those applications. And then the third one is from the US DOT, the All Stations Accessibility Program. And then lastly, as I've mentioned a couple months back, one of my goals for this calendar year is to meet with all the cities, counties, and COGS within District 10. We started scheduling those meetings, and we're happy to report that the first one that we're actually doing is tomorrow in the city of Newman. So we'll be with the mayor and his public works director, as well as the city manager, to talk about coordination events and how we can, as Caltrans, be better partners and make better connectivity with the locals as well as the Caltrans as a whole. We've also been in talks with the city of Ceres, so looking forward to that. The goal is to meet with everybody by Veterans Day, so we're going to be busy, and so bringing updates to the board as we meet with your constituents. So looking forward to that, and happy to take any questions or comments. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Caleb. Any questions for Caltrans?
I think it should be acknowledged, Grace, that Caleb has been such a engaged, and I want to thank you because I know we've been having our issues here for quite some time, and the support we received from Caltrans and Caleb, it's been outstanding. So we appreciate it.
Great comments. Any others? All right. Thank you guys very much. Thank you guys for being here. Executive Director report, Amber.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to make a comment on the Caltrans report too. Just thank you for your partnership already on the coordination with the OWP and SR 132. I met with Director Masayo last week, so I'm really looking forward to working again with the district and excited that Caleb's in the position he's in now. So thank you for your partnership. This is my first executive director's report, so thank you. I've been here my first 2 weeks here. I've gotten a warm welcome again from the board members as well as staff, and I just focused the last couple of weeks on just listening and learning. I've met, trying to do one-on-ones with each of the board members. I've gone to some of you, and I still need to meet with others, meeting with staff as well as our partner agencies, Caltrans and SGRC and Stan RTA. I have a meeting with Adam on Monday, and then just trying to continue, Stan Cobb participating in events and activities in the industry. I know a lot of city addresses. I attended the series, Stay the City address, and then I know Modesto is coming up, which I know will probably be an update. And so, my priority has been just making sure I'm stabilizing the core operations of the agency, building the work that was underway by the previous interim director, and the work the board has been doing, and just really making sure the agency, like with the OWP, is meeting our mandatory functions and reporting requirements, making sure we're in compliance and we're not going to lose any funding or funding is at risk. So those are kind of top priority of just daily activities and what's top of mind, and just being fully transparent with the board and the public as we move this forward and do those things. And while those are our priorities, I'm not losing sight on, what is our long-term goals for the agency and making sure that the agency continues and work towards serving its communities and executing the mission of Stan Cobb. So we're not losing sight of that as we're going to do those two things in parallel. So I'll look to begin kind of outlining a more formal work plan that will kind of outline those priorities for your consideration with kind of key timelines and milestones. And then just some key specific updates. I know you received a lot here. 2 positions are being flown, so the finance director position as well as planning director, and hopeful to get those filled. In the meantime, thank you very much for supporting the staff augmentation, Karen Dunger's contract. And another item, the salary survey was brought to the Management and Finance Committee, and so that'll be brought back to you at a future date. They did form a subcommittee of 3 representatives from the Management and Finance Committee to review and guide that process and bring back recommendations at a future date for the board's consideration. We're continuing to do our audits to try to close those for fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25, and closing the books for those years. I'm hopeful to close the books on 23-24 at the end of this month. And as you saw today, our programming team and our planning teams are just continuing to do good work. A lot has been happening, and now you're seeing that coming out. I know that Mr. Jose Luis and his team, Sophia, have been, serving our agencies, doing FTIP amendments, trying to move projects forward. And then we'll be bringing probably the largest, I think, funding approvals or funding round at our next May meeting. And I talked about the shop, well, actually the 2026 shop that just got adopted actually included a really good project, SR 132 East Yosemite Boulevard Complete Streets Project. So thank you, Caltrans, for including that. It's in Modesto and Empire, so that should be a very exciting project to watch and participate in development of that. And then just upcoming events. So the Major L Ad Hoc Committee is meeting this Friday. As you heard, thank you, Mayor Zuellen, for bringing up the RTP has some open houses, which we provided the flyers for on April 21st and 22nd. I will be attending with staff, board members, the San Joaquin Valley Policy Council and Directors Retreat at the end of this month. And I believe our May meeting will be busy. We'll be having a lot of contracts to bring to you, as well as SR 132 update and a lot of action items for SR 132 will be in that meeting. And then our fiscal year 26-27 OWP and budget will be at that meeting as well. That's my report. Apologies for the link.
No problem. Thank you, Amber. Any questions for Amber? All right. Oh, go ahead, Terry.
Just no questions, Amber. Just, we are very excited that after 2 weeks, you are still here. I appreciate you doing it. Hang in there.
Well, you got my picture up.
I call and check on her all the time to make sure. All right. Member reports. Any member report?
I have a member report, and thank you for reminding me that State of the City is tomorrow night. It's kind of nice to be here and be thinking about other things. We will have staff tables set up. A fire truck will be there. It will be at the State Theater, Historic State Theater in downtown Modesto, just right around the corner here. So doors will open at 4:30 p.m. and we will start promptly at 5:30 p.m. So it'd be great to have everyone. You're all invited. My report is the pavement rehabilitation on Kansas, Orangeburg, and Scenic is nearing completion. Right?
Yeah.
The final pavement striping and cleanup is expected to be complete in early May. So this work included $14.8 million in Measure L funds across 6 projects. So we're excited about that. We do get some complaints about traffic flow, but I don't think they're going to get sympathy from the 7 of us. People wanted the roads fixed, and that's what we're doing. And it's been good to see. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you for your report, Mayor. Stacy.
While we're on the topic of State of the City, Riverbank State of the City is April 30th at 6 p.m. Doors open at 5 at the Riverbank Community Center.
Any others? All right, we're adjourned.
Mm-hmm.